Hi, it's Kevin Wright here again with another weekly property finance tip. So what are we going to be talking about this week? Well, how do you decide what is the right strategy for you to adopt in property? So if you'd like to know that, then stick around and keep watching. Okay, so if you're not really worked out what your strategy is going to be yet, how do you decide what is the right one for you? Now, a number of people that I talk to and investors that I help and train and everything else, I see that some people end up with a strategy that's incompatible in varying degrees to the circumstances that they've got. And possibly this is influenced by the training courses maybe they've been on. So they decide their strategy by the course they went on rather than the circumstances they've got and aligning it to. So it's a bit reversed around really. So you should take your circumstances and then apply a strategy or strategies that fit your circumstances, not try and squeeze your circumstances into a strategy. Sometimes it works, but not always. So, is there a process to work out what's good for you? Well, I believe there is, and it's one I've been sort of training investors on for a number of years. And essentially, it's working out what you don't like leaves you eventually with what you do like. So again, it's a bit of a reverse engineering type of thing there. In fact, it's almost like a decision tree, really, in that you start off at the top, and whether you say yes or no, whether you go left or right, determines where your next question is, and you'll work your sort of way down there. So I think the first fork in the road, if you want to call it that, the first fork in the road, do you go this way, do you go this way? And the first fork in the road is going to be, do you want to sell or do you want to keep and rent out? So maybe you don't actually like being a landlord, or whether you've experienced it and didn't like it or don't really fancy it. Not everyone does. So if you don't particularly like being a landlord, you're going to be someone that buys and then sells. Flip is a common Americanism for that. You could be a flipper. So if you did that, you'd have a big chunk of money coming in every few months possibly, but not much in between. So you get occasional big lumps of money. Probably the majority of people want to be a landlord and build up a portfolio, and there's a lot of logic around that because, this property that you rent out, it can give you not big lumps of occasional cash, but small lumps of regular cash on a monthly basis. So, and the more properties you build up over the years, the bigger that monthly cash flow could be. $3 grand a month, $5 grand a month, 10 grand a month, and you don't have to do an awful lot of work typically as a landlord. I mean, it's certainly not the passive income that everyone says it is. Some strategies are less passive than others, but there's normally at least some maintenance work, getting a new tenant in there, and that type of thing. So, but you get an income stream on there. So your first real decision is, are you going to buy and sell, or are you going to buy and hold and rent out? So once you've made that decision, if it's buy and sell, then there are other decisions you make. But if you're going to buy and rent out, okay, so now you come to another fork in the road. So if you're going to buy and rent out, you can buy two types of property. In terms of the condition, I mean, not the use. So two types of property. So you're either going to buy it ready to rent or doer-uppers. Ready to rent is easy because it's all done up nicely. You might have to do a minimal amount of work maybe, but almost immediately you'll put a tenant in there, start getting some rent. So that's easy. But there's a downside to that because you're going to have to put down a normal deposit, which is normally 25% in most cases, and there's no way to get that cash back out again other than waiting until the property increases in value, and that enough to draw out a sizable chunk. That could be a few years in the making. So ready to rent is simple, but it's a voracious eater of cash, and unless you're starting with a massive pot and very few people do, you're pretty going to run out of cash. In fact, as I say, unless you work out how to recycle your cash, most people would run out of cash before they run out of ambition. So all your cash is sitting in properties, but you haven't got the size of portfolio that you ideally want. So buying ready to rent is simple, but it's actually very limited in its nature before you run out of cash. So what's the opposite? The opposite is to buy doer-uppers, as you might want to call them. So properties in a poor condition that you can improve, usually by refurb, not always. You can get planning permission or title splitting or other things like that. And then you refinance at the uplifted value, and then that allows you to pull hopefully all your cash out, but a big chunk of your cash out anyway, and then you go again. So your cash pot gets used on property after property after property. So you decide which of those. Are you a ready-to-renter or are you doer-upperer? And most people would go down the doer-upperer route because it actually allows you to buy more property with a fixed cash sum. So the next decision is, do you invest close to where you live or do you invest far away? Now, most people out of choice would invest where they live. The people that find that most challenging is those that live in more expensive parts of the country and they haven't got the ready cash to build a portfolio exactly where they live. So they tend to spread out into cheaper parts of the country. But how far do you go? So, a simple way, and a simple way could be to just go in any direction 360 degrees from where you live and see how far you can get up the major road links until you find somewhere that's affordable to you. And it probably isn't too much hassle to travel within an hour, but if you have to go 3 or 4 hours or more, it becomes more problematic. And of course, it may be an area that you don't actually know property prices that well. So you've got to educate yourself on that. So, and again, the way you buy your properties. Now, if you've watched any of my videos, you'll know I talk a lot about bridging finance and how you can use market value bridges to actually reduce the purchase, not the purchase price, but the deposit that you need to put down. So that could enable you. In fact, a number of the students I've trained, that's enabled them to buy closer to home. So you need to work out, whether you're close to home or whether you have to go far away and how much further away from where you live do you have to go. So there's another decision. And whether you're buying to rent or buying to sell, another fork in the road is, do you go for commercial or do you go for residential? Both have got their advantages and disadvantages. If you go for residential, well, there's more of them, and you would put those on an AST. It doesn't matter whether it's vacant or whether it's rented in terms of getting a mortgage. So there are advantages to resi. Commercial, whether it's fully commercial or semi-commercial, is different. If it's vacant, you can't get mortgages on it, so it has to be tenanted. So that could be a barrier to commercial. Of course, bridging will allow you to overcome that. So, but there are other advantages with commercial, and one of the advantages is that the tenant is responsible for refurbing the property and maintaining it. So because that's part of a commercial lease, and you'll get a commercial lease that runs longer than residential ones. So ASTs are normally 6 to 12 months, and then they go into a rolling AST. But commercial leases can be anything from 3 years up to 25 years in certain cases. So and there are pluses and minuses with that. With residential, you don't have to be an experienced landlord to get one. With commercial lenders, you do. So again, there's differences both ways. So do you go for then single lets or HMOs? There's another fork in the road. Single lets typically more reliable. Tenants tend to stay for longer. The house doesn't take such a hard wear, but of course the income and the profit you make each month is lower. HMOs, you get a bigger cash flow from a house because you rent out by the room, and as long as the HMO is full or reasonably full, near to full, then you're going to get a superior return, but you're going to get a bigger churn of tenants. So you're going to be there, you're going to have more voids, although, advantage with HMO is if you have 1 or 2 tenants missing, you've still got some income coming every month. If it's a single let, you've got no income or all the income coming in every month. So there again, pros and cons. So what length of lease do you go for? Do you go for short let or you have a long let? So a short let would be something like serviced accommodation, where you're renting essentially by the room, and also you can rent by the house as well, but you're renting by the night. As opposed to the standard thing, which is an AST that sits in the middle, which is 6 to 12 months. If you're going to go short and do service accommodation, Airbnb, that type of thing, then that limits your lenders, because most standard buy-to-let mortgage lenders won't allow you to rent for terms of less than 6 months. So you're into sort of commercial or maybe specialist type lenders. Conversely, you could go long. You can do for long lets, so like you'll let to a housing association or a council or a charity, and these tend to be 3 or 5 year leases. And again, they're fully repairing leases because they're a commercial lease. So how does that work? Well, again, standard buy-to-let lenders only want ASTs on 6 to 12 months. The person that's living there is not your tenant. They're the client of the tenant. So that means you're back into commercial mortgages again. So there we are. Hopefully you've seen on here that there is a lot of decisions to make. So working all of those out can take some time, and it's normally the ones that you don't like is going to steer you down the other way. It's often that way rather than, I really like this. It's often, I couldn't be doing with that, so that's going to make me go, that way. Hopefully that helps you, give you some guidance on how you go about working out which is the right strategy for you. So if you enjoyed this video, there's another couple coming up. So you're going to have some links to show you right now. And hey, if you haven't subscribed, click this link and then you won't miss any of my future videos. Have a great week. I'll see you next week.